The small room smelled faintly of damp and old paint, the kind of smell that clung to your clothes and lingered even when you tried to air it out. The young woman sat on the edge of a thin mattress, her back hunched, staring down at the small bundle in her arms. The baby stirred slightly, letting out a soft whimper, and she gently adjusted the blanket around her. She looked at the tiny face, the delicate hands that could barely grasp anything, and a wave of sorrow washed over her. She had wanted so badly to give this child a better life, a life full of love and safety, but everything seemed stacked against her. Her own life had never been easy. She grew up in a neighborhood where opportunities were rare and hardships were constant. Her parents had passed when she was young, leaving her to fend for herself. Family was a concept she knew only through stories from neighbors and distant relatives who had long since stopped caring. She had learned to survive on her own, taking small jobs wherever she could find them, sometimes cleaning houses, sometimes delivering packages, or washing dishes at a local diner. The work was exhausting, the pay barely enough to cover the rent for the tiny room she now called home. And now, with a baby to care for, every challenge felt magnified, every worry heavier. She had tried to make things work. Truly she had. She had sacrificed sleep, food, and her own comfort to provide for her child. But as the days turned into nights and the nights back into days, she realized that her best efforts were not enough. The baby needed more than what she could offer. There were times when she had gone without meals, letting the little one eat first, feeling the hunger gnaw at her stomach, as she whispered apologies to the child she loved more than anything. There were nights when she cried silently, holding the baby close and wishing she could somehow magically make their lives better. One evening, after returning from a long day at the diner, she sat on the edge of the bed and watched her baby sleep. The soft breathing, the tiny fingers curled into fists, and the innocent expression on the child's face filled her with both love and despair. She knew that life had given her a harsh hand, but the thought of her baby facing the same struggles broke her heart. She wanted her child to have opportunities she never had, to learn, to grow, to play without fear or hunger. She wanted a life where the baby could laugh without worry, a life where small joys were not rare and fleeting. For weeks she had thought and worried about her situation. She had considered asking friends for help, but most of her acquaintances were struggling with their own problems. She had considered social services, but the thought of the child being placed in a distant, unfamiliar home, possibly with people who did not understand love, terrified her. And yet, as the days went by, she realized that if she continued alone, she could not provide the care and stability the baby deserved. She had to make a decision, one that filled her with fear and sadness, but also hope that she could do what was right. A name kept coming to her mind, a man she had seen around the neighborhood, a single father who seemed to manage his life with calm determination. He was always polite, always kind, and though she did not know him well, she had heard stories from neighbors. He cared for his own child, a little boy, with devotion that was rare to witness. He worked steadily, kept his home tidy, and seemed to have patience that others lacked. Watching him from a distance, she had often wondered how he managed to balance work, life, and parenting with such ease. And now, in her desperation, she wondered if he could be the one to give her child the life she could not. The thought of approaching him made her nervous. What if he refused? What if he thought she was irresponsible or incapable? But every time she looked at her baby, the urgency to act grew stronger. She needed to give her child a chance, even if it meant swallowing her pride and facing rejection. She rehearsed what she would say, the words that could explain her situation, her love for the child, and her hopes for a better future. She knew she had to be honest, to show sincerity, to make him understand that her request came not from laziness or carelessness, but from love. The next morning, she found the courage to approach him. He was outside playing with his little boy in a small park near their building. The sight of a father and child laughing together filled her with a mixture of warmth and sorrow. She took a deep breath, clutching her baby tightly, and walked over. He noticed her immediately, smiling politely as she approached, unaware of what was about to unfold. She paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. The words tumbled out, hesitant at first, but filled with genuine emotion. She explained her situation, how she had tried her best but was unable to provide the care her baby needed. She described the struggles she faced, the long hours, the insufficient pay, and the fear that her child would not have a chance at a better life if she continued alone. She admitted her fear, her guilt, and her love, hoping he would understand that she was making this decision out of necessity and not neglect. The man listened quietly, his expression shifting from surprise to concern. He glanced at the baby in her arms, noting the delicate features, the fragile appearance, and the soft cooing that filled the air. He could see the bond between the mother and child, and he felt a mixture of empathy and apprehension. He had never been asked to take care of another child, and the responsibility was daunting. But he also recognized the sincerity in her eyes, the desperation that came from love rather than convenience. After a moment of silence, he spoke gently, asking questions about the baby's health, daily routines, and the mother's expectations. She answered as honestly as she could, aware that this conversation could change both their lives forever. She explained that she would not abandon her child completely, that she wished to remain involved, but she needed someone to provide stability, care, and a safe environment. The man nodded slowly, absorbing every word, weighing the decision carefully. The conversation lasted for what felt like hours, though it was likely only a short time. They discussed responsibilities, schedules, and boundaries. She emphasized that she did not expect him to replace her, only to provide a nurturing environment while she worked toward building a better life for both of them. He considered the situation deeply, thinking about the challenges and the rewards. He thought about his own child and the joy and fulfillment that came from nurturing another life. He thought about the potential for love, growth, and connection, and finally he made a decision. He agreed to temporarily care for the baby, promising to treat the child with love and respect. He assured her that he would provide a safe home, proper meals, and emotional support. She felt a mixture of relief and sorrow, knowing that while her child would be safe, the separation would not be easy. She thanked him repeatedly, tears streaming down her face, and handed over the baby with trembling hands. As he held the child gently, she whispered a promise that she would remain present, that she would do everything in her power to be part of the baby's life. As she walked away, her heart ached, but she also felt a glimmer of hope. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, that emotions would run high and challenges would arise. But for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of possibility, a faint light in the darkness of her struggles. She had taken a step to ensure her child's well-being, to give the baby a chance at a better life, and that decision gave her a renewed sense of purpose. The single dad looked down at the baby, cradling the small body with care. He could feel the weight of responsibility, but also the warmth of trust and the promise of connection. He knew this was not just about caring for a child. It was about building a relationship, about fostering love in difficult circumstances. He felt a sense of determination, a quiet resolve to do everything he could to provide stability and nurture, not just for this child, but for the young mother who had trusted him with something so precious. That night, as the baby slept peacefully in a small crib by his side, the single dad reflected on the day. He realized that life had a way of testing people in unexpected ways, and sometimes those tests brought opportunities for growth, compassion, and love. He knew that challenges lay ahead, that the situation would not be without difficulties, but he also understood that the bond between a child and those who cared for them could create resilience, hope, and joy. Meanwhile, the young mother sat in her tiny room, feeling the emptiness where her child had been. She thought about the day's events, the difficult conversations, and the decisions she had made. Her heart ached, but she also felt a strange sense of peace. She had acted out of love, and in doing so, she had given her child a chance at a life she could not provide alone. She resolved to work harder, to create opportunities, and to eventually reunite with her baby in a new, stronger, and more hopeful chapter of their lives. Days turned into weeks, and with every visit, the bond between the young mother, the baby, and the single dad grew stronger. She saw her child thriving, smiling, and laughing, and her heart swelled with pride and relief. He too learned to navigate the challenges of caring for another child, discovering patience, empathy, and resilience he did not know he possessed. Together, in their own unconventional way, they began to form a fragile, beautiful family, built not just on blood, but on love, trust, and the willingness to sacrifice for someone else's well-being. And so, in the quiet of small apartments, playgrounds, and shared moments, the first chapter of their story unfolded, a story of struggle, hope, and the beginnings of a bond that would change all their lives forever. The single dad was cautious at first, unsure of how to manage the sudden addition to his already busy life. Caring for his own child was a challenge, but now there was another little life depending on him, a life that carried both innocence and vulnerability. The baby he had agreed to care for was fragile and required constant attention. Feeding schedules, nap times, and diaper changes filled every moment of his day. At first he worried whether he could handle it, whether he could meet all the needs without faltering. But each time he held the baby in his arms, he felt a quiet strength he had not known before, a determination to do everything right. The baby adapted quickly to the new environment, responding to the warmth and attention the single dad provided. The little eyes, curious and alert, would track his movements, reaching out with tiny hands and letting out soft coos that melted the tension of the day. Even on the most exhausting nights when the crying seemed endless and fatigue gnawed at him, he found comfort in the small smiles and gurgles that reminded him why he had taken on this responsibility. There were moments of frustration, of course, when the demands felt overwhelming, but each challenge brought a lesson in patience and resilience. Meanwhile, the young mother watched from a distance, visiting whenever she could, eager to ensure her child was settling in well. Each visit was a mixture of relief and sadness. She saw the baby thriving, the tiny cheeks rosy, the eyes bright, and she felt a sense of pride and reassurance. Yet at the same time, a pang of guilt accompanied every glance, every touch she offered. She had made a choice that was necessary, but it still left her heart heavy. She wanted to be part of her child's life, to offer love and care, but she had to respect the arrangement and trust the man she had chosen to help. The two adults began to navigate this unusual relationship carefully. They communicated openly, discussing feeding routines, nap times, and the baby's moods. The single dad would ask questions when he was unsure, and the young mother would offer guidance based on what she had learned in the few months she had cared for the child. They found a rhythm, a shared understanding that despite the initial tension and uncertainty, their priority was the well-being of the baby. The trust they built became a foundation for an unconventional partnership, united by concern for a child rather than personal gain. Their daily routines began to blend in small, natural ways. Mornings were busy with breakfast and playtime for the single dad's own child, and then the baby's needs would take precedence. There were moments when both children would play together under his watchful eye, laughter and chatter filling the small apartment. The young mother sometimes joined in during visits, creating a sense of continuity and connection for the baby. It was not a traditional family, but it was a family in the truest sense, built on care, commitment, and the shared joy of watching children grow. As days turned into weeks, the single dad began to notice changes in himself. He had always thought of himself as capable, but this experience tested him in ways he had not imagined. He learned to anticipate needs, to soothe cries with patience, and to offer comfort without hesitation. He discovered a depth of compassion he had not fully realized, a willingness to put another's needs before his own without resentment. And he also began to see the young mother in a new light, recognizing the courage it had taken to make such a difficult choice and the love that had guided her every decision. For the young mother, each visit was a lesson in humility and strength. She saw firsthand how her child was cared for, how stable the environment was, and how the baby responded with smiles and laughter. She realized that her decision, though painful, was creating opportunities that she could not have provided alone. It motivated her to push harder for her own independence, to find better work, and to improve her living conditions so that, one day, she could play a more active role in her child's life. The hope that had seemed distant in her own struggles now felt achievable, a goal worth pursuing. Neighbors began to notice the unusual arrangement, whispering among themselves about the single dad caring for another child. Some were skeptical, questioning whether he could handle it, while others were quietly impressed by his commitment. The young mother's absence was noticed too, but those who knew the story understood the gravity of her choice. Slowly, the community began to offer small forms of support. An extra meal here, a babysitting offer there, or a kind word of encouragement. These gestures, though small, helped both adults feel less alone in their efforts. Challenges arose inevitably. The baby cried during sleepless nights, and there were moments when the single dad felt stretched to his limits. He had to juggle work, his own child, and now another baby, all while maintaining a sense of stability. There were days when frustration bubbled over, when the exhaustion felt unbearable. Yet every time he looked at the tiny face with eyes that seemed to understand trust and love, he found renewed energy. He learned that parenting, especially in difficult circumstances, was not about perfection, but about perseverance, love, and patience. The young mother faced her own set of struggles. Watching her child with someone else brought feelings of inadequacy, even though she knew she had made the right decision. She wrestled with guilt, worrying that her child might forget her or feel abandoned. She had to remind herself constantly that her presence, though limited, was valuable. Each smile, each recognition from the baby, reinforced that bond and gave her the courage to continue on her own path of personal growth and responsibility. Over time, the three of them began to form subtle routines and connections. Mornings might start with the single dad and both children having breakfast together, followed by playtime, and then the young mother arriving during her lunch break or after her shifts to spend a few precious hours with the baby. The adults shared information about milestones, feeding, and health concerns, building trust and ensuring continuity. While it was not easy, it was a living example of cooperation, empathy, and shared responsibility for the child's welfare. The baby, oblivious to the complex adult emotions around, thrived. Each day brought new smiles, giggles, and discoveries. The first laugh in the morning, the first attempt at crawling, the tiny hands reaching out for comfort, all these moments reminded the adults why they had come together. They were united by love for the child, even if circumstances had brought them together in an unconventional way. They learned to celebrate small victories, to find joy in the everyday moments that often go unnoticed, but carry immense significance in the life of a child. As the weeks passed, the single dad found that caring for another child, while challenging, brought unexpected fulfillment. It reshaped his perspective on parenting and life. He realized that love is not limited, that it can expand to include more than one person, more than one child, and still remain genuine and nurturing. He also discovered that he could build a meaningful connection with the young mother, based on trust, respect, and shared commitment. Their relationship was not romantic, but it was deeply human, a partnership born of necessity that grew into mutual understanding and support. The young mother, encouraged by the progress she saw, began to take steps toward improving her situation. She applied for better jobs, explored educational opportunities, and sought ways to stabilize her living conditions. Each step was motivated by the hope of one day being able to provide alongside the single dad, of creating a more inclusive and secure environment for her child. She found strength in the bond between her child and the single dad, realizing that her love was not diminished by distance or responsibility. It was a living love, expressed through careful decisions and daily care. The days were filled with laughter, challenges, and learning. The small apartment, once quiet and solitary, now resonated with the sounds of life, babies cooing, children playing, and adults communicating with care and intention. The single dad and the young mother learned to navigate disagreements without letting them affect the baby. They learned to respect each other's boundaries, to communicate openly, and to place the child's needs above their own. This delicate balance was difficult, but it created a foundation of stability and trust that both adults relied upon. Evenings often brought moments of reflection. The single dad would sit with both children, reading stories or rocking them to sleep, marveling at the resilience of the little lives in his care. The young mother would sometimes watch from a distance, her heart swelling with love and gratitude, knowing that her difficult choice was already bearing fruit. They both understood that this arrangement was temporary, that the future would bring changes, but they were committed to making the present a safe, loving space for the child. Through the shared responsibility, the adults discovered new dimensions of themselves. They learned patience, empathy, and the power of unconditional care. They discovered that love can manifest in unexpected forms, that family can be created through trust and shared commitment rather than blood alone. And most importantly, they realized that by coming together, even in unconventional ways, they could provide something invaluable, a safe, nurturing environment where a child could grow, thrive, and experience the kind of love that forms the foundation of a strong, resilient life. In these early days, the single dad and the young mother formed the beginnings of an unconventional yet functional family, Their lives intertwined in a delicate dance of responsibility, love, and cooperation. The baby thrived. The young mother began to rebuild her life, and the single dad embraced a broader vision of parenting and care. They faced challenges, uncertainties, and emotions they had never encountered before. But each step forward reinforced the bond between them. The story of struggle, hope, and the power of human compassion was just beginning, promising growth, connection, and the possibility of a brighter future for all involved. The days grew longer, and with them came a rhythm that none of them had expected to find so quickly. The single dad woke early every morning, tending to his own child and the new baby in his care. He had grown skilled at reading their needs, noticing subtle cues and anticipating moments of discomfort before they escalated. Despite the exhaustion that sometimes weighed heavily on his shoulders, he found joy in the small victories, the baby sleeping peacefully for a full stretch of time, both children playing together without fuss, a smile that appeared unexpectedly. Each day reinforced that he was capable of more than he had realized, that love could expand to encompass more than one child without diminishing. The young mother continued to rebuild her life, slowly but steadily. She found work that paid better and offered more stability, and she began to save, envisioning a day when she could create a home where she could once again care for her child. The moments she spent with her baby were treasured, filled with laughter, gentle rocking, and soft whispers of reassurance. The visits became the highlight of her days, and she discovered that even when she was not physically present, her influence and love were felt. She saw the growth in her child, the trust forming with the single dad, and it gave her hope that her difficult choice was the right one. Challenges persisted, of course. There were nights of inconsolable crying, mornings where fatigue made even the simplest tasks feel impossible, and moments when the adults questioned whether they were doing enough. The single dad sometimes felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, wondering if he could truly manage another child alongside his own. The young mother, in turn, struggled with feelings of guilt and inadequacy, worried that she might be missing critical moments in her baby's development. But through all the stress, a new understanding emerged. They were learning not just about caring for a child, but about resilience, patience, and the strength that comes from mutual support. The bond between the baby and the single dad deepened. The child began to recognize him as a source of comfort and safety, reaching out with tiny hands, cooing in delight when he appeared, and relaxing in his arms during moments of distress. The single dad learned to respond instinctively, soothing cries with gentle rocking and soft words, creating an environment where the baby felt secure and loved. He also began to notice how his own child responded to the presence of the new baby, learning lessons in sharing, empathy, and the joy of caring for someone else. The young mother observed these changes with a mixture of pride and relief. She realized that her decision, though difficult, had allowed her child to experience stability and love that she could not yet provide on her own. She began to see the single dad not just as a caretaker, but as a partner in nurturing, someone who shared her vision for the child's well-being. Their communication grew more fluid, discussions about routines, milestones, and challenges becoming natural and collaborative. They navigated disagreements carefully, always placing the baby's needs above personal feelings, and in doing so, they built a foundation of trust that would sustain them through more difficult times. As the seasons changed, so too did the dynamics within the household. The children grew more comfortable with each other, sharing toys, laughter, and even moments of gentle rivalry that were part of growing up. The single dad found creative ways to engage both children, organizing small games and activities that nurtured development while fostering a sense of connection. The young mother contributed during her visits, teaching simple skills and enjoying the playfulness of her child. Together, they created a balance, an environment that was not perfect, but filled with care, attention, and love. Social perception added another layer of complexity. Neighbors sometimes whispered, questioning the unusual arrangement and doubting the single dad's ability to handle it. Friends occasionally offered advice or unsolicited opinions, some supportive, others skeptical. The young mother encountered judgment as well, with people questioning her choices or assuming the worst. Yet both adults found strength in their focus on the child. They learned to navigate criticism with patience, recognizing that what mattered most was the welfare of the baby, not the approval of outsiders. Health and well-being became a priority. The single dad ensured regular doctor visits, proper nutrition, and safe sleeping arrangements. He learned to recognize minor health concerns before they became serious, relying on both observation and guidance from medical professionals. The young mother monitored the child's development during her visits, noting milestones and small changes that indicated growth and health. This shared vigilance strengthened their partnership, creating a collaborative approach to raising a child that was rooted in care and attention. The emotional landscape evolved as well. The single dad discovered a depth of empathy he had not anticipated, feeling joy, pride, and even occasional anxiety in response to the baby's experiences. The young mother wrestled with complex emotions, balancing relief that her child was thriving with the natural sorrow of separation. They both learned to express feelings without judgment, discussing concerns openly and honestly, which further solidified the trust between them. The child, blissfully unaware of the adult complexities, grew in a cocoon of care that nurtured both body and spirit. Education and play became central to daily routines. The single dad introduced simple learning activities, reading stories, encouraging exploration and fostering curiosity. The young mother contributed by bringing small educational toys or guiding play in ways that stimulated development. Each day offered new discoveries, new challenges, and new reasons for laughter and delight. They celebrated these moments quietly but meaningfully, understanding that growth in these early years set the foundation for a lifetime. The relationship between the adults, though not romantic, deepened into a respectful partnership. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, to offer support during stressful moments, and to celebrate successes together. Trust became a central theme, allowing them to manage the complexities of raising a child in a shared arrangement. Each decision was made collaboratively, each milestone recognized and appreciated, and each challenge approached with patience and empathy. Financial pressures persisted, but the young mother's steady work provided some relief. She was learning to budget, save, and plan for the future, driven by the vision of one day creating a home where she could play a larger role in her child's daily life. The single dad continued to manage his responsibilities carefully, balancing work, childcare, and the needs of both children. Together, they navigated these challenges, learning that cooperation and planning were as essential as love and care. Moments of quiet reflection became part of their routine. The single dad often sat in the evening, watching both children sleep, marveling at the resilience and innocence of these small lives. The young mother, during her visits or afterward, would contemplate the changes she had undergone, recognizing her own growth in patience, determination, and understanding. They shared stories, advice, and sometimes simple words of encouragement, learning from each other and reinforcing the partnership that had formed. As months passed, the baby grew stronger, more confident, and increasingly interactive. The bond with both adults deepened, creating a sense of security and belonging that was tangible in the small gestures and smiles. The single dad and the young mother celebrated these moments together, understanding that their unconventional arrangement was working, that love and care could thrive even in circumstances far from traditional. The neighborhood began to notice the transformation. Skepticism slowly turned into admiration as people saw the dedication and thoughtfulness with which both adults approached parenting. Some neighbors offered assistance, meals, or small acts of kindness, recognizing the extraordinary effort being made. The young mother, once isolated, began to feel a sense of community support, while the single dad felt the reassurance that their efforts were acknowledged and valued. Through the trials, laughter, and everyday moments, they built a stable environment that prioritized the child's well-being. Each day reinforced the lessons of patience, love, and shared responsibility. They learned that family could take many forms, that connection and care were what truly mattered, and that growth, both for the children and the adults, was nurtured through consistent, intentional effort. The first real milestones arrived. The baby's first words, first steps, and first attempts at independence were celebrated quietly, but meaningfully. Both adults reveled in the small victories, understanding the significance of each moment in shaping the child's development. They took pride not just in the accomplishments, but in the consistent love and support that made these milestones possible. The young mother felt her heart swell with pride, knowing that she had made a choice that allowed her child to flourish, while the single dad recognized the depth of his own capability and capacity for care. As the chapter of these months drew on, the trio settled into a rhythm that balanced responsibility, love, and personal growth. The young mother continued to rebuild her life with the knowledge that her child was safe, nurtured, and thriving. The single dad embraced the expanded role, finding fulfillment and strength in his ability to care for another life. And the baby, surrounded by love from both adults, grew with confidence, curiosity, and joy. Through it all, the story was one of resilience, adaptability, and human compassion. It was a story that demonstrated how difficult choices, guided by love and concern, could lead to unexpected strength and connection. Each day, small yet profound lessons were learned about trust, patience, and the transformative power of care. The three of them, each navigating their own challenges and emotions, formed a bond that was unconventional but genuine, creating a foundation for the chapters yet to come in their shared journey. Life was no longer as simple as it had once been for the single dad or the young mother, but it had grown meaningful in ways they had never anticipated. The children brought laughter, energy, and a sense of purpose into every corner of their lives, even as responsibilities multiplied. Each day presented new challenges, but with them came small, powerful moments of joy that reminded both adults why they had taken on this unconventional journey. The single dad found that balancing two children required a constant shift in focus. Mornings were a flurry of preparation: breakfast, getting dressed, organizing activities, and making sure both children felt secure and ready for the day. At times, he felt stretched to his limits, wondering how one person could manage so much. Yet each evening, when he watched the children play together or cuddle into sleep, he felt a profound satisfaction. He realized that parenting was not simply about managing tasks, but about creating an environment filled with love, trust, and consistency. It was exhausting, but the rewards were immeasurable. The young mother continued to visit, her presence a reminder that her choice had not been abandonment, but an act of love. She would bring small gifts, books, or toys, careful to provide nurturing moments that strengthened the bond with her child. Her visits were full of affection, gentle guidance, and encouragement. She learned to trust the single dad's judgment, knowing that he was as committed to the baby's welfare as she was. Slowly, she began to accept that sharing care could be as meaningful as sole responsibility. Her pride in her child's development was visible in her smile, even as she grappled with lingering guilt about the separation. Challenges arose unexpectedly. The single dad faced judgment from neighbors and acquaintances who questioned the arrangement. Whispers of doubt and speculation sometimes reached his ears, making him second-guess his decisions. He worried about how people perceived his ability to care for another child, whether they understood the depth of commitment and love he offered. The young mother faced her own social pressures. Friends and distant relatives questioned why she had allowed her child to live with another adult, sometimes suggesting she had failed. Both adults learned to navigate these judgments with patience, understanding that their primary responsibility was the welfare of the children, not the opinions of others. Despite these pressures, the bond between the baby and the single dad grew stronger each day. The child began to show signs of comfort, trust, and attachment, responding to gentle voices, soothing touches, and consistent care. Even during difficult moments like colic or restless nights, the single dad learned to anticipate needs, adapt quickly, and provide reassurance. He found that challenges became opportunities to grow, not just as a caretaker, but as a person capable of patience, empathy, and resilience. The young mother, too, discovered unexpected strengths. Watching her child thrive under the single dad's care gave her courage to pursue her own goals. She sought better employment, began attending evening classes, and took steps to improve her living conditions. Each small achievement was motivated by the hope of one day sharing in her child's everyday life more fully. Her love, though sometimes tinged with sadness, remained unwavering, and she discovered that care could take multiple forms without diminishing its depth. The children, blissfully unaware of adult worries, brought life and warmth to the small apartment. They laughed, played, and explored, their curiosity shaping the rhythm of daily life. The single dad encouraged exploration, providing safe spaces for learning and play, while the young mother contributed during visits, guiding activities and nurturing the child's curiosity. Together, they created a shared environment that balanced structure with freedom, discipline with affection. Health and well-being were constant priorities. The single dad made sure both children had regular checkups, nutritious meals, and adequate rest. He learned to detect minor issues before they became serious, relying on both observation and advice from healthcare professionals. The young mother kept track of developmental milestones, noting changes and reporting them during visits. This cooperation reinforced the sense of partnership, showing that raising a child was not a solitary effort, but a collaborative responsibility. The emotional landscape between the adults continued to evolve. The single dad discovered that patience and empathy were not merely traits but skills honed through experience. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment in nurturing another life, learning that love could grow in unexpected ways. The young mother confronted the complexity of separation and attachment. Understanding that her love for her child was not weakened by distance, she discovered resilience and determination, finding ways to contribute meaningfully without being physically present at all times. Social interactions provided both challenges and support. Some neighbors began to understand the arrangement, offering kind words, assistance, or gestures of encouragement. Others remained skeptical, but their opinions mattered less as both adults focused on the children's well-being. Small acts of community kindness, a shared meal, babysitting help, or simple conversation brought reassurance and reduced feelings of isolation. The young mother felt a growing sense of empowerment, knowing that she could navigate life's challenges while maintaining a meaningful connection with her child. Daily routines became a blend of structure and spontaneity. The single dad introduced learning activities, storytelling, and creative play, fostering cognitive and emotional growth. The young mother contributed by sharing skills, guiding interaction, and providing moments of attention and affection. The children thrived in this environment, exploring, laughing, and learning. Each success, however small, was celebrated, reinforcing the bond among them and nurturing confidence and security in the baby. Despite progress, moments of doubt were inevitable. The single dad sometimes questioned his ability to balance responsibilities, and the young mother occasionally felt pangs of guilt. Yet each time they confronted challenges, they discovered resilience and adaptability they had not known they possessed. Their partnership, though unconventional, grew stronger through open communication, mutual respect, and a shared focus on the child's welfare. The children, meanwhile, benefited from the consistency, attention, and nurturing environment created by both adults. Financial pressures were managed carefully. The young mother's improving work situation allowed for some independence, while the single dad balanced employment with childcare responsibilities. They coordinated expenses, shared insights, and found creative solutions to challenges. Each adult learned the importance of planning, collaboration, and resourcefulness, recognizing that love alone was insufficient without practical support and foresight. The children's development became increasingly apparent. The baby's first words, steps, and moments of curiosity were celebrated by both adults. These milestones brought joy, pride, and validation for the decisions made months earlier. The single dad recognized the depth of his own ability to nurture, while the young mother felt the reassurance that her child was thriving. Together, they learned that love and care could take many forms, and that family was defined by commitment, trust, and shared responsibility, not just by traditional structures. Evenings were often moments of reflection. The single dad would sit quietly watching the children sleep, marveling at their resilience and innocence. The young mother would contemplate the growth she had experienced, the lessons learned, and the choices that had led to this shared journey. Both adults understood that their collaboration was not perfect, that there would be future challenges. But they also realized the profound impact of consistent care, empathy, and love. The neighborhood began to shift in perception. What was once viewed with skepticism gradually became recognized as an extraordinary act of compassion and dedication. Small gestures of acknowledgement and support reinforced the adults' confidence in their decisions. The young mother began to feel empowered, seeing that her choice had created stability and opportunity. The single dad felt affirmed, understanding that his efforts were meaningful and effective. Together, they reinforced a nurturing environment that was unconventional but profoundly human. As time progressed, the children's personalities emerged more clearly. The baby's curiosity and playfulness blended with the older child's energy, creating moments of laughter, discovery, and gentle rivalry. The adults learned to guide interactions, mediate disputes, and foster empathy, These experiences strengthened the emotional and social growth of both children, creating a sense of security and belonging. The bond between the single dad and the young mother deepened, founded not on romantic attachment, but on shared responsibility and respect for the lives they nurtured. Every small success reinforced the lessons of patience, adaptability, and unconditional love. The adults discovered that nurturing a child required consistency, collaboration, and selflessness. They learned to navigate setbacks without losing focus, to celebrate progress without arrogance, and to maintain emotional balance amid the unpredictability of daily life. These skills, honed through experience, became integral to their shared journey. The story of their lives during this period was one of growth, learning, and connection. The single dad's capacity for care expanded, the young mother's resilience strengthened, and the children flourished in a stable and loving environment. Each day presented challenges and opportunities, tests of patience and moments of joy, but together they navigated them, building a bond that transcended conventional definitions of family. The foundation laid during this time promised future growth, connection, and the possibility of a more complete life for everyone involved. Through laughter, tears, and countless small moments, the single dad and the young mother learned the power of collaboration, trust, and love. They discovered that family was not defined solely by biology or tradition, but by the dedication, care, and time had passed. And the small family they had created through circumstance had grown in ways that none of them could have imagined. The children thrived in a home full of care and attention, each milestone bringing smiles, laughter, and quiet satisfaction to the adults who watched them. The baby, who had once been fragile and dependent, had grown curious, active, and confident, and the single dad found himself proud in ways he had never expected. His own child, who had initially faced the adjustments of sharing attention, had learned empathy, patience, and the joys of watching another child grow. The young mother had continued her journey toward independence. She had found a stable job that allowed her to save, and she had begun taking steps toward creating a home where she could provide alongside the single dad. Her visits were no longer tinged with anxiety or guilt, but filled with pride and hope. She saw her child grow, laugh, and explore, and she knew that the decision she had made months earlier had been the right one. The child's bond with both adults had deepened, a testament to the power of love, patience, and collaboration. The single dad had embraced his expanded role fully. He had learned to balance work, responsibilities, and the needs of both children with skill and patience. There were still challenges, of course, sleepless nights, moments of frustration, and the occasional worry that he was not doing enough. Yet he had discovered resilience, creativity, and a deep capacity for love that gave him confidence. He knew that the children were safe, nurtured, and thriving, and that knowledge brought a sense of fulfillment that went beyond any material reward. Their lives had become a rhythm of shared responsibility and support. Mornings were busy, filled with breakfast, preparation for the day, and playtime that encouraged learning and growth. Afternoons brought naps, quiet reading, and gentle guidance, and evenings were often a time of reflection, storytelling, and family closeness. The children learned to navigate this environment with curiosity and confidence, feeling secure in the love and attention surrounding them. They did not always understand the complexities of adult decisions, but they thrived in the stability provided. Challenges continued to appear. The single dad sometimes struggled with the emotional weight of caring for another child, wondering if he could maintain patience during difficult moments. The young mother occasionally wrestled with the lingering guilt of not being able to provide full-time care. Yet, through open communication, mutual support, and shared focus on the children's well-being, they overcame obstacles together. Each challenge became an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to reinforce the bonds that connected them. Community perception had gradually shifted. Neighbors who had once been skeptical began to offer support, small gestures of kindness and acknowledgement of the extraordinary care provided. The young mother began to feel a growing sense of empowerment, seeing that her choice had created stability, opportunity, and happiness for her child. The single dad felt affirmed in his ability to nurture, recognizing that love and dedication could create a thriving environment, even in unconventional circumstances. Education and play remained central to daily life. The single dad encouraged exploration, learning, and creativity, using games, stories, and activities to stimulate growth and curiosity. The young mother contributed with visits that included shared reading, guided play, and skill-building activities. Each milestone, first words, first steps, first attempts at independence, was celebrated with quiet pride and joyful acknowledgement. These moments reinforced the success of their partnership and the nurturing environment they had built together. Health and safety continued to be priorities. Both adults maintained regular medical checkups, proper nutrition, and safe routines. Minor issues were addressed promptly, with careful observation and timely intervention. The children's well-being was consistently monitored, ensuring that growth, development, and emotional needs were met. This attention created a sense of security that allowed the children to thrive physically, mentally, and emotionally. Emotional growth was equally significant. The children learned to navigate relationships, express emotions, and develop empathy through interactions with both adults and each other. The single dad discovered patience, emotional resilience, and joy in nurturing beyond his own child. The young mother grew in confidence, independence, and understanding, learning that love could be expressed in many ways without diminishing its power. Together, they modeled compassion, cooperation, and shared responsibility for the children. Financial stability improved gradually. The young mother's steady work allowed her to contribute meaningfully to shared expenses and plan for future independence. The single dad balanced work and childcare, ensuring that both children had access to necessities, educational materials, and enriching experiences. Their careful planning and collaboration allowed them to maintain a stable and secure environment, providing a foundation for future growth and opportunity. As time went on, the children's personalities flourished. The baby who had once been dependent became playful, curious, and expressive. The older child demonstrated empathy, responsibility, and the joy of caring for another. The single dad and young mother celebrated these developments, understanding that their combined efforts had created the conditions for growth, learning, and happiness. Each day reinforced the value of patience, collaboration, and unconditional care. The partnership between the adults remained strong. They communicated openly, resolved conflicts with respect, and prioritized the children's needs above personal differences. Their relationship was not romantic but deeply human, based on trust, mutual understanding, and a shared commitment to the well-being of the children. Through this unconventional family structure, they discovered that love and responsibility could take many forms, each as meaningful and valid as the traditional model. The neighborhood gradually recognized the beauty of this arrangement. What had once been viewed with skepticism was now seen as a testament to human compassion and resilience. The adults' dedication, creativity, and care inspired quiet admiration and support. Small gestures from neighbors, such as helping with childcare or offering words of encouragement, reinforced the sense of community and belonging. The young mother felt strengthened by this support, and the single dad felt reassured in his ability to provide for the children. Daily life continued with moments of learning, play, and quiet reflection. Milestones were celebrated, challenges were met, and growth was observed in both children and adults. The single dad's confidence in his abilities as a caretaker deepened, and the young mother's understanding of her capacity to make difficult but loving decisions strengthened. Together, they created a nurturing environment that prioritized the children's happiness, security, and development. Through laughter, challenges, and shared experiences, they learned the meaning of resilience, empathy, and commitment. The children thrived, growing in confidence, curiosity, and emotional awareness. The adults grew as individuals, discovering strengths and capacities they had not realized existed. The household, though unconventional, was filled with love, stability, and the quiet joy of shared responsibility. The story concluded not with dramatic events or sudden changes, but with the steady, meaningful growth of everyone involved. The baby who had once needed constant care had blossomed into a joyful, confident child. The single dad had expanded his understanding of love, patience, and caregiving. The young mother had found stability, purpose, and hope for the future. Together, they had built a life that, while unconventional, was rich in love, trust, and human connection. In the end, the lesson was clear. Family is not defined solely by biology or traditional roles. It is defined by care, commitment, and the willingness to put love into action. Through difficult decisions, collaboration, and shared dedication, They had created a nurturing environment where children could thrive and adults could grow. The baby had found a place of security and joy, and both adults had discovered the profound fulfillment that comes from selfless love and shared responsibility. Their lives, intertwined by circumstance, had become a testament to the resilience of the human heart, the power of compassion, and the extraordinary outcomes that can arise when love guides every decision.